All right. So, just a few seconds to go before 10 a.m. So let's go for it. I'm Jason Rohde, live from Montreal at Nomad Studios. And this is Canadian Culture Through Film. And boy, do I have a special day for you. I say that every time, but it's a bit of a surprise for me as well today. So just to recap how we got here, I started telling you about my own culture and my connection to the American culture that I was feeling through the movies when I was but a child. And then I studied film. Late in my teenage years, I saw a couple of movies that came out of Montreal that made me connect with this city. And finally, I felt like I recognized my own culture. Before, like what I showed you last week, for example, the kind of Quebec culture that I thought I was supposed to belong to was not one that I really recognized myself in, you know, because of its tackiness and even the general language of it. I don't know, I was even a bit ashamed of it in a way. But through these movies, through specifically Eldorado and 32 Août sur Terre, and there was also a couple of other ones like Léolo that I really connected with. And these films really made me want to move to Montreal, from New York to Montreal after studying at NYU. So what we've done in this class is basically follow my own process in finding my culture, starting with Canadian culture as a whole, the context, the history of that, through the films of François Girard, then with the indigenous cultures, of course, and the films that they've produced. We talked about the NFB, the whole experimental side of Canadian filmmaking that the NFB really championed. And then with Cronenberg, we went for something more general for Canada, for Canadian filmmaking, and then started zooming in some more on Quebec. And this week, we're zooming in on Montreal. And the two films I'm going to be showing you are Eldorado, which is, I've cut it down to 37 minutes, and then we're going to watch the whole of 32nd of August on Earth, which is Denis Villeneuve's first film. So I'm going to press play, and then I'm going to, I'm just going to tell you that in time, I became friends with Pascale Bussières, who's the main actress in both Eldorado and 32 Août sur Terre. And so just as I was preparing the class a couple of days ago, I gave her a quick call and asked her if she'd want to join us. So for the last 45 minutes of class, we're going to talk to Pascale about these films specifically and about Canadian culture as a whole. So let's dive in the way we know how. It's about 2 hours long, but I had a hard time cutting it down.
Le jeune homme entre dans sa voiture. La jeune femme sort de chez elle. 5 filles entrent dans un bar. L'autobus démarre. Le bouncer sourcille. The beat is on. La lumière crie. Le jeune homme pleure, la vieille femme meurt. L'homme frappe, son amant tombe, la voisine appelle. Le policier tire, la vitre éclate. Et puis elle l'embrasse. Elle le lèche. Et lui, il sourit. Bonsoir. C'est Gaspard. Et bienvenue à Extérieur Nu.
je vais vous apporter ça 3/4 d'heure. Ok, je les ai tous lavés, pliés. Si vous voulez, je peux en reprendre un autre.
In the style of Robert Altman, there's all these intertwining stories, much like P.T. Anderson did with Magnolia or Boogie Nights, you know, so you have all these actors and all these characters intertwining into this story. They all kind of know each other, but not all directly. And this here is Pascale Bussières. She was, I don't know how old at the time, but she might have been 20 or so when she made this, but she was already quite the star in Quebec. And so I cut most of the film out, as I mentioned, and I've only kept for you the scenes that really involve her and her storyline. This movie blew my mind when I was younger. I already knew I wanted to be a filmmaker, but it blew my mind because of how real it feels. This is the Montreal I knew. This was finally the culture that I felt I belonged to, and it's because of this naturalism and this realism. Of the character stories and their acting. Now, how did they achieve this? Charles Binamé, this is, I believe, his second film, and he credits the actors as writers on the film, and apparently all of the dialogue of the film was improvised. So I'm going to be asking Pascale about how they went about this. How did they... what was written, how much of the structure was written, because all of these stories really intertwine well together. It doesn't feel like a kind of a random improv that landed however it wanted to land. It's a well-constructed story. So the name of the cellist is Gilles Lamotte. His music, the cellist's music, is also improvised. So I'm wondering if everything about the film was improvised in this way. And back in the day, when I saw the film, I didn't know Montreal the way I do now. And watching it again, I recognize every street, every corner, every shot. And many of them I kept in this cut just because I wanted to point them out to you and go, oh, this is this bar, and that's Saint Denis right there to the right. And I used to have an apartment on this very street, right about where they are, which is somewhere near Mount Royal, I think. So, you can really recognize those street corners. And the life that is captured in that summer of 1993 is really such the Montreal summer. Summers here get hot. We have tough winters. Our summers are very short. So our summers are electric in Montreal. We really make the most of them.
Parmi vous qui partent en vacances pendant l'été, ce qui est une excellente chose. Le seul problème, c'est que ça a tendance à faire baisser nos cotes d'écoute. Alors, si vous le voulez bien, ce soir, on va essayer de les faire buster.
He says that the ratings have gone down, so he's going to try to bring them up here a little bit.
Des situations réelles et le fruit d'une pure coïncidence. Je retourne à mon auto. Je tourne
Park Avenue.
De Sanguinet et je vois un homme en uniforme en train de prendre le numéro de ma plaque. Je m'approche de lui, en silence, et le gars se retourne au moment où ma hache s'enfonce dans son épaule. Il s'écroule par terre, il essaie de sortir son gun. Je saute sur lui, j'y arrache son gun. Je l'entends gémir, je vois le sang pisser, je tire, la balle rentre dans sa tête, le sang gicle,
Je sens la cervelle gélatineuse qui m'explose dans la face, ça me fait chier, je tire encore.
J'ouvre le hood de mon char. Ça devrait faire l'affaire pour les codes d'écoute.
He just tells this violent story, and then he goes, well, that should help the ratings.
Vous êtes toute une gang de style malade.
Et le gars qui fait la radio.
This place is les foufounes électriques. This bar is it's just so well. It's still open, and they still play this kind of music. Yeah, it's kind of an iconic place in this city.
Une photo dans un journal, un fait divers, d'amour. Antoine R, 15 ans, s'était couché sur la voie ferrée avec son violoncelle. Elle était là avec lui. Je ne sais pas combien de temps ils ont dû attendre. J'ai pensé à ce gars qui avait sans doute dû lui dire à elle que personne jamais ne les laisserait être heureux et qu'il fallait finir ça là à 15 ans. Elle, peut-être, elle l'a pas cru. Elle s'est poussée.
He's talking about a teenage suicide there. You know how I was telling you about my own search for authenticity in my work. And this film is really one of those movies that influenced me the most in that regard. Just about all of my movies have improvised soundtrack. Gave the movie to the right person and have them improvise to the film. And it's from seeing something like this, an example like this, that gave me that confidence.
Hey.
This film was very hard for me to find. I had a VHS copy of it. I couldn't find it anymore.
That's fine.
And it wasn't released on DVD.
Ben, c'est même.
Ton souper, ça? C'est confortable?
Non, je pense que je vais plutôt essayer.
So they don't know each other in this scene, and she just kind of comes in there, and she's living in the streets, kind of. She's been living with Roxanne, who found her in the street. Her character is wonderful as well. We could have watched this whole movie. I simply love it. But she's quite prude in the rest of the film, so this is really out of character for her. And her story is that she's with this guy, but she's kind of she's going through all kinds of ups and downs. She has a wonderful scene that I had to cut out where she's crying and laughing at the same time. She doesn't know why she's crying, and her boyfriend is really supportive of her. And then she does this thing in the bar's bathroom to kind of ruin the punch. She ends up getting pregnant from this encounter, and she doesn't know who the father is in the end.
Arrêtez, continue. Il n'y a rien qui est à moi. Arrête, pas ça, man!
So this is Roxane's apartment where Pascale's character is staying. She's always giving. She's giving all of her time. We don't understand exactly why until a scene that's going to come up a little later. But essentially, she has a very rich father who's paying for everything, her apartment and so on. So I guess it gives her some kind of guilt. So she devotes her life to giving to others, which is why she's letting Pascale's character stay with her. Unfortunately, Pascale ends up dealing drugs from that apartment, and, well, this ensues. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Trainspotting with Ewan McGregor, the Danny Boyle film, but when I was, I guess, 18 or so, I saw that movie. And for the next few years, I thought to myself, well, the actors I would most want to work with are Pascale Bussières and Ewan McGregor. You know, of course, I told Pascale about this, I think probably the first time I met her. I've told her many times that I was a big fan, and I still am, of course. In both this movie and 32 Août sur Terre, you'll find how, I don't know, she can seem very intimidating and hard to approach, all that. So, and in real life, she is she's one of those people that are most easy to approach, and that's why it was easy to become friends with her. That's in front of Euro-Daily. Those steps on Saint Laurent Street are... I've sat on those steps many times. Unfortunately, Euro-Daily's been closed for at least 5 years, but for about 20 years. I'd go there often enough, grab a pizza. It was a great little Italian deli.
Je te masse un peu. Je vais-tu la fier? Non, je pense pas.
Pierre Gilles is the cinematographer on this film. This was his first film where he was the DP. And the camera is much in the style of the acting, very cinéma vérité. Remember we were talking about cinéma vérité, what it is. It's kind of a fly on the wall kind of approach to filming. I'll be asking Pascale, if I forget, you can ask her, whether his camera work was also improvised, much like the acting was. I have a strong feeling that it was. Pierre Gilles has gone on to be DP on maybe at least 20 films, series, and so on, and a couple of them had Pascale in them. Park Avenue again. I drive up this street at least once a day, if not twice. And I used to live right on that corner.
Tu cherches la poupée?
Ouais, t'es parti.
Comment c'est parti?
Je suis parti, t'avais jusqu'à 4 heures pour venir.
Non, mais on avait dit 48 heures.
C'est ça, 48 heures.
The puppet has been sold.
Qu'est-ce que tu fais là? T'as vendu la poupée? Qu'est-ce que tu fais?
Man, je t'avais dit 48 heures, c'est quoi là?
Juste au téléphone, t'as dit
T'as pas fait ça, man! Je vais t'expliquer quelque chose, OK?
Oui.
Moi, j'ai besoin de cette poupée-là. Je suis dans marde. Comprends-tu?
Oui.
Je suis dans marde. Sais-tu ce que ça veut dire, ça? Fait que tu vas me retrouver la poupée, tu vas me retrouver le gars à qui tu l'as vendu. Combien tu l'as vendu?
This is the character whose girlfriend is pregnant with, with either him or the radio host.
Est-ce que tu vas aller?
Anyway, later on, they meet again, and he ends up having kind of pity on her.
C'est sûr que je passe pas l'hiver à Montréal. Je sais pas où je vais aller, faut que je me pousse. Je suis tannée.
I'm so tired.
Je suis tannée de leur face de rat, des putes, ces Shylock partout. Je suis écœurée d'une bête.
Tired of their faces, the whores,
Je suis plus capable. J'ai toujours la tête.
the streets, always looking over my shoulder.
Je veux-tu te prendre une cigarette?
Ouais.
Merci. J'ai manqué le train.
I missed the train.
On avait tout arrangé, tout était prévu.
We had it all figured out.
On savait à quelle heure les trains passaient.
We knew what time the train would pass. This relates to the story that the cellist was telling earlier about the teen suicide.
Moi, je me suis poussée.
We laid there, and when the train arrived, I left. I missed the train. I guess the boy killed himself.
Je suis plus capable de parler à personne. Je suis plus capable de toucher à personne.
I don't know who to talk to. I don't know who to touch.
Plus personne qui me touche.
Nobody wants to touch me.
De toute façon, ça sent le pourri.
Anyway, it smells like rot.
J'ai les vents engourdis.
Viens tout de suite.
I'll be right back. Man, I mean, her acting, like in the earlier scene when she gets mad at because the puppet was stolen there, she's just so realistic, you know, like you see this pain in her face. It's like, it looks like they got someone off the street for this, and in fact, she's a bona fide actress. Her next role was playing someone all chic and everything, a mythology teacher. Oh yeah, so James Hyndman's character, he sees that someone has passed away, and they don't know who it is, and there's a certain description of this person that resembles her, so he goes to the morgue to see if it's her that's died, and the scene goes on there. He cries by the wall. I had to cut it short. So, but it's not her. So he's really kind of coming around here, and it's through his strange relationship with her that he's evolved. He ends up seeing her at a rave. This is in the 90s, you know, mid-90s that this was shot. This was right in the, you know, when the raves were the thing and starting out, and I was part of that culture. That's why I mentioned Trainspotting before. It also has a kind of scene with like electronic music. So anyway, he looks at her, and he sees her from a distance, and waits for her to leave before approaching her in the morning. This is the ending of the film. Such an asshole throughout the film, but here he
Parti vite l'autre fois.
becomes all humble.
Parti vite l'autre soir.
He left quickly the other night.
Quand je suis sorti de la toilette, tu étais parti.
When I left the toilet, you were gone.
J'étais en train de... J'étais en train de préparer des théories pour te remonter le moral quand...
I was trying to think of theories to make you feel better when I'd see you again.
Corny, hein?
Why don't you do that again?
Dans le cou.
There's one more scene after this that I cut out of the cellist again. But you know, it's interesting that this is happening on a train track. With the train story, having missed the train and all of that. And this is where she ends up, well, ending the film.
Je savais que t'allais être là.
Says, I knew you'd be there.
J'ai mal aux jambes.
My legs are hurting.
Sur un lift.
Wanna ride?
Ouais.
Just like when they met the first time with the red car, she asked him for a ride. He gives her a ride. So, I don't want to assume that you know Denis Villeneuve. This is his first film. The one he did after that is called Maelstrom. I like Maelstrom even better than this one. but it wasn't as successful somehow. Anyway, he made Incendie or Polytechnique after many years later. Then he made Incendie. Incendie became an international success. And then he went on to make Prisoners, his first American film. Then he made Enemy in Toronto, and with Jake Gyllenhaal. And after Enemy, let's see if I can do this off the top of my head. So Blade Runner was the one that followed, and now he has Dune in the can that we can't wait to see, was supposed to come out in December. And he comes right here from the Mile End. Mile End is the neighborhood where Nomad is.
Te souviens-tu une fois, on s'était promis quelque chose, toi puis moi? Ben, est-ce que tu voudrais me faire un enfant, Philippe, s'il te plaît? Écoute, pense-en pas à personne, mais je suis pas partie en télé. Faut absolument que je te voie. Non, même pas, Juliette.
Ben, tu dois pas l'aimer, toi non plus, ben gros, vous me proposez des affaires de même, hein?
30 ans, puis t'as pas tes licences. T'es pas pire.
Oui. Il y a un gars, une fille qui demande à un gars de lui faire un enfant. Le gars, il est plutôt amoureux de la fille. Ma question, c'est, est-ce qu'il devrait accepter le deal et baiser avec elle?
Tellement bandant comme place, finalement. Hein?
Je vais dire oui, mais...
T'es prêt?
Un peu.
And here you are.
Okay, I'm here.
So it's so good to see you, and I'll admit it's a little surreal to be watching you on the screen and then have you pop up there.
Yeah, exactly. It's surreal for me too to see myself, such a long time ago.
Does it feel like a long time ago?
Yes. It
does, really?
But, well, yes and no. I mean, it's still me, I'm still that girl. I'm still that young woman, I guess, somehow in my spirit. But it's been 30 years ago. So
yeah, well, it's really good to have you and to have you join the class. There's 21 students. Everyone's here today. So
hi, everyone.
I've told you this already. I've probably told you 2-3 times, but I'll tell you again, just for the sake of this discussion, how to me, you're not really the same girl that you were in those movies, because when I saw those movies, I showed them like 37 minutes of Eldorado, which lasts about 2 hours. So I really tried to keep it only to your scenes to try to fit that in, because it was such an influential movie for me. I've told you that. And so I have a lot of questions about that movie, because it's very particular with the improv and everything. I've always been...
about Eldorado.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And then with 32 Août sur Terre as well, these two movies are the movies that made me connect with Montreal. I wasn't living in Montreal when I saw them, and I didn't feel like a Canadian. I didn't feel like a Quebecer. I connected more with the American culture just because of the movies that I'd seen and had influenced me. But in watching you in those films, and I say you in those films because it's particularly you that had this effect on me, it created this connection. Like I recognized myself, like, okay, this is my culture. My culture is not Quebec or Canada, it's Montreal. And later, I don't know how much later I met you, maybe 15 years later or so. you were so human to me so fast. I didn't really have that feeling of being starstruck, despite having been like a real fan of yours. You know, like I'd mentioned that back in the day when I was a teenager, I'd seen Trainspotting, and I wanted to work with Ewan McGregor and Pascale Bussières, you know. So out of the whole world of actors,
would be a good match.
It would be an amazing match. And you're in a similar age as well, but you're so approachable, and in those movies you seem a little intimidating, you know. You're kind of tough and everything, and you really don't come across like that in life. So right from the first time I met you, I was able to quickly separate you from your roles. And I wonder how much you do that as well. When you look at yourself in movies, I don't want to say like in every movie because you've done all kinds of roles, but in movies like those where you play a role that might be closer to who you are, and that's what I imagine anyway, do you see yourself or do you only see the role?
Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer because it's part of both, you know. There's certainly a big part of myself that I'm injecting in every roles, every part, because it's my physicality, it's my way of, you know, walking, my way of my rhythm, the way I speak, the way I put words in my mouth, you know, these elements, even though we can work it out and make it something else, it's basically ourselves, you know, as persona, as a human being. But then the character is also a stranger, is also someone who I don't really know, but I'm going towards this person, and it's like an encounter, you know. It's like we're meeting somehow in the middle, you know, that frontier between reality and fiction somehow. So it's a big part of myself in every roles I've played, I would say. Now that I'm, you know, that I'm looking at it 30 years after, I see myself. I see myself that maybe I didn't have these story or these issues, but the character itself is certainly close to what I was at the time, especially with Eldorado and 32. How do you say that in English? That title?
I think the title in English is August 32nd on Earth.
On Earth, yeah.
Well,
those two parts are probably the closest characters I've played closest to myself.
It
overall,
feels that way.
You know? Yeah.
Because
it was so connected to some issues of my generation at the time we were making the film, and Eldorado was improvised, as you said before. So when it's improvised, let's say the actor's input is even bigger because we're playing with what we are, you know, mostly. Even though she was a tough, let's say, loose cannon, that character in Rita in Eldorado. But that was the grunge area. I remember that, and
that's right.
My connection with that character specifically was a bum living in the park next to my place in Carré Saint-Louis.
Okay.
His name was Denis, and he was a bum, but he was really dynamic, and you know, he was doing some kung fu and karate, you know, and I was giving him some books to read, and we had those exchanges and you know, those conversations. And he was my physical inspiration for that character.
Well, it's not a surprise that you knew someone to connect you to that world, I guess, or that persona, because it really is so real to me. There's, you know, the scene in the cafe near the end where you say, like, I stink, you know, like it smells like rot and all of this. I remember it feeling so real to me, and I've met a lot of people like this since, you know, kind of lost souls in the streets and people that you want to love, but that you don't want to trust, which is a strange dichotomy. And
very intense and very inhabited and so much
full of pain. There's a lot of pain in your face in that movie. I'm thinking of the scene when you go to try to get the puppet back, the way you argue with that guy, you know, it's anyway, it's very real. I don't want to just spend 45 minutes complimenting you. I'm I'm curious. I'm very curious about the improvisational aspect of Eldorado, because I think that's pretty much the only film that Charles Binamé did like this. I've worked with improv in film, and it's not easy, and you rarely land with something that has as much structure as Eldorado, because every character is weaved together perfectly, and it's almost like nothing is wasted. So how do you improvise something like that? All the actors are credited as writers in the film, but is that something that is that something that you did before shooting, like sitting down and talking?
The way we worked it out is that we met like maybe a month or 2 months before the actual shooting of the movie. We met in a country house for 5 days, and then we really established the line of each characters very specifically. So we worked out we did some improvisation there, you know, just trying to.
And was your character already defined by Charles Binamé before you did that? Like, were you supposed to be someone living in the street and that sort of thing?
Not by Charles, but by each of the actors had to create his own character.
Wow!
So it was our total responsibility to, you know, maybe being inspired by, you know, this or that. I remember looking at Courtney Love at the time, you know, the grunge area, and I said, okay, I like this dress, but it you know, it looks like an underdress more than a dress, and with the rollerblades and everything. For me, these connections were in my musical environment or physical environment. So everybody had to work on their own characters, describing their way of, you know, speaking, their way of walking, their way of living, and all these different aspects of their life, let's say. And then we shaped the dramatic line of every character, and we pinpoint some junction, you know, in between those different lives, because it's like, you know, at the time Altman did Shortcuts. I don't know if you've seen that movie. That was
I mentioned Altman at the beginning to the class. I mentioned how this is similar to Altman, and Altman also inspired Paul Thomas Anderson when he did Boogie Nights and Magnolia.
Boogie Nights.
Yeah, these kinds of intertwining stories, you know.
So yeah, it's those destinies that are crossing, you know, all the way the narrative line, let's say. So that's how we pre-prepared to that, to be ready to jump on that bus, because we rented the bus for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, running around Montreal, you know, just driving around Montreal, and Charles would be the director would be with us in that bus, saying, okay, now I want you're going out, you're having an argument, and at the end of it, you go on that side by yourself, you know. So that these were let's say the commands, and then we would jump like lions and on set, and the director of photography, Pierre Gill, at the time, was on rollerblades also, because it was easier for him to follow the action. So these were some how do you say that, the contraintes?
Yeah, constraints.
constraints that we gave ourselves just to create, like a playground, and we would jump on that without knowing exactly where it would lead us. So it was a lot of fun, but very, very demanding, because for many days you have to stay sharp all the time. You wake up at 7, you don't know how, the day is going to be made of. So it's really exciting, but very tiring also, because it's like, it's a little bit schizophrenic. You have to be conscious of that, the overall story, but then you have to be totally in the present moment of dealing with the situation. So it's very exciting. I don't know if I could do this anymore. I don't know.
Because it's too tiring. The whole way of kind of living on the bus and doing it this way is what you mean.
It's a journey, it's like, it's like going for Burning Man, for 2 weeks. It takes a lot of energy, but it would be interesting to try to do it again with the same actors, like 30 years after, where, how supple are we still capable of, how because it needs some faut que l'esprit soit souple,
Yeah. It may, I know I'm going to forget some questions that occurred to me, but one of them that I wanted to ask you that I really have no idea about is how you got into acting, because how old were you when you made that first film where you're some suicidal teenager? Yeah, right.
I was 13 years old.
So, and you hadn't done much before that, right?
I have done nothing before that. I had not, it was my first experience. It's Micheline Langto's first film. And she was looking for teenagers for that movie. And she just, there was this journalist announcing on the radio that Micheline Langto was looking for teenagers for her film. And then my mom heard that on the radio, and she wrote down the phone number of the casting agency. So I called and I went, and I just, but totally naively, I wasn't really fantasizing on being an actress, really. It was just like another experience, like, like going to a camp or going to, to a summer vacation. It was just like another,
And were your parents in that industry in any way, or?
No, both my parents were teachers, but my father used to do a lot of amateur theater. Okay. And I used to go and see him play. I have those memories of my father dying on stage, and I was really traumatized. But maybe that was, maybe that contributed to put a seed in my spirit at the time, maybe.
So you really fell into it. It was kind of, well, I don't want to say your destiny. Of course it was your destiny, but it's interesting how it wasn't like your dream or something like that, and it wasn't from nepotism that you fell into it. You just had the charisma for the right directors to pick you at such an early age. And then you worked with Charles Binamé on Blanche. And just last night, I was mentioning that to my daughters when telling them, or last night or the night before, when you confirmed you were going to do this, I was telling them, it's so crazy how dreams come true. I used to look at this actress like someone who was unattainable, and now I just text her and she's joining us. And I was
that's the 21st century.
Yeah, and I was trying to describe to them who you are, and that's the example I used, because they know those characters. They read Les Filles de Caleb, and so as soon as I said Blanche, I said she played Blanche, and they both lit up. Okay, really? Can you show me that? And I went up on IMDb and found a couple of pictures of you playing that part. Wow. Yeah. So and had Charles Binamé also done the series for Les Filles de Caleb?
No, No.
Okay, he just did Blanche,
he
the
just
kind
did
of
Blanche.
follow-up.
Well, yeah.
And then his first film was Eldorado, am I right?
No, that was not his first
Or
film.
second, maybe.
Because he worked in English a little bit before that. I'm not sure about that actually.
Anyway,
Eldorado, but that was in his first let's say steps in the movies, because he did series before that. But that was a big experiment.
Right. And since you were improvising, did you have training? Did you ever train as an actor, or you just got it all from experience and then fell into an improvisational role where I guess you really had to develop those muscles very quickly?
Well, since I started at a very young age as an actress in the movie industry, I didn't go to the theater school like all the other, like the normal path of an actor, going 2-3 years at the École Nationale des Beaux-Arts or au Conservatoire. So I didn't have that kind of training at all, because when you go to the theater school, you have certain, classes where you have to, improv. But I was not trained for that at all. So I felt a little like the underdog. I was like, oh my God, this is impossible. I can't go there. I cannot open my channel just like that and being totally in the moment and integrate all these informations. I felt like I would never be able to do this. But I guess it's a state of mind, and it's just the training is by doing it, right? So it's just a question of being totally aware and in some kind of openness of what's going on. But then I totally admire people who are, let's say, doing the Ligue Nationale d'Improvisation, who are the National Improvisational League. I don't know if you know that, guys, but it's very famous here in Quebec. It used to be really famous 30 years ago, but these are, for me, it's total poetry for me, because you have to be so connected.
Well, you saw actually All We Have Is Now, and that's some of that is improvised, not as much as it seems, but we try to make it look like it's practically all improvised. And I'm somewhat glad that we're not doing that play anymore because of COVID, because it was so tiring for me to do it. And I kept doing it every month almost.
It's a very great exercise. It's a very great exercise. And different each night. So it has, it's like a meeting point between theater and cinema. Somehow. And we have experience. Go ahead. I don't want to cut.
No, please. What were you going to say?
I've been doing a lot of theater lately, and because of the COVID, we've been doing some theatrical captation for the TV, so it's like a little bit the other way around. So we were trying to create a junction between two different mediums, and it's pretty hard, because the live le spectacle vivant, the living theater, has his own codes, right? His own it's different way to embody the character. So, but to film it, when you put a camera on that and you go for a close up, suddenly it's just a different sport, So it's but people somehow wanted to see those captations. The demand was there. So I did I did like 3 different captations, and I was just asking to myself, is this like a new medium, a new way to, like, a junction between theater. Robert Lepage did this with le côté obscur de la lune. And I don't know how many thousands of people watched it, and I was really surprised, because it's not a film, it's not TV, it's not theater anymore, it's just something else, So yeah, I was just I just wanted to talk about this.
You know how interested I am in that junction of all the media and of life itself, you know, and I haven't told them about All We Have Is Now, but that's a big exploration of all of that, you know, of how it all mixes together, theater, film, and life, somewhere, I don't want to say in the middle, but under it all. So yeah, it's been in the themes that we're exploring through every single class so far, and it's interesting that it's coming up again. This brings me to Villeneuve's movie, the 32nd of August.
August?
Yeah, August 32nd. So that first film of his feels so autobiographical to me. One of the things that tells me that it's autobiographical is because Alexis Martin looks at the camera, I think 2 or 3 times in the film. And he's the only one that does that. And because of the whole subject of the film, like this adoration for a girl who's kind of an actress model, it seemed like there were real links to life there. Although the character is a medical student, I doubt Denis was a medical student. Maybe he was, but I don't think so. So, do you know if how autobiographical it might have been, this film, or it's all imagination?
I would respond to that saying that all creation is how do you say that in English? It's really autobiographic. Autobiographical. Anyway, yeah. I think it certainly was close of his way of seeing life, seeing relationship, seeing the necessity of or the fear in front of the idea of having a kid, of perpetuating himself. These are questions or issues that probably Denis really had at the time. And Alexis Martin really embodies, it's true that he could be close to Denis Villeneuve, the way he thinks, the way he speaks, the way he just walks around, questioning himself. So it's very close to Denis' character, because Denis, when he's on set, he really has this capacity of concentrating, but it's, you physically understand his concentration. He's walking around with his head in his hands like that, and I have wonderful pictures of him and his director of photography at the time, and in the desert, talking about the scene and everything. Yeah. But these were
with
André Turpin, yeah. These were fantastic moments because we were really free. And I don't think we're doing films with this kind of freedom anymore. Because
tell me about that. What freedom do you feel you had that has been lost?
It just that it became an industry, and at the time it was not considered as an industry yet, because we were still creating our cultural let's say cinema. The technicians were not so let's say professionals. They haven't worked that much. We were just out of the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. We were still, out of a NFB, the National Office of Cinema, where they mostly made documentaries. So, and it's not such a long time ago, but it was really still we call it the nouvelle vague du cinéma québécois. These films are part of this, era. And it was, you didn't have to be in front of a committee and try to to explain every aspects of your scenario. It was not so complicated to get financed. And then we took off and went to Salt Lake City, and we were like a bunch of kids making a movie, and the producer were totally confident that something interesting would come out of that. Today it's you have to, the battles are a little more heavy, and there's more money involved, there's more so it creates a little more difficulties to do this, even though we still
Roger Frappier was producing, and I think he might have produced a film or a series that you were in before, something like that. But I'm wondering, essentially, this was Denis' first film. And before that, he had done la course autour du monde, I think. Yeah, I think that's what it was called. Just for the class's sake, this was a really awesome TV show. It was like a reality show at the time, kind of even a game show, you could say, where these directors were traveling the world, like a handful of directors. Yeah, very young, like 20. Yeah, and they could make any movie. And then every week you'd be tuning in, and you'd watch the short films of all these directors that are rushing to make a new movie every week. Very short films. And it was amazing. And it didn't last very long, but some directors that are still working today really came out of that show, and the main one is Denis, of course. So besides that, and he made another movie in Jamaica, which is wonderful. I forget the name now, but so he hadn't done much in a way, but he had set himself apart on that show. So because you were, you weren't as much of a novice at that point in your career. You were a famous actress. What brought you onto the project? What made you trust Denis' vision? Was it because of Roger Frappier, or what brought you in?
Well, it's different aspects. I knew Denis because he went to film school at Université at l'UQAM. I was going to film school at the Concordia University, so we were doing some short films and like video clips at the time all together. It was part of the same gang, let's say, creative gang. And also because I read the script and I thought it was, there was some very interesting poetic aspects in the films. I knew his works in La Course Autour du Monde, where in every films there was this, we can say today, we can tell that there was the seeds of what it would become,
there's like an existential kind of search that surrounds everything he's ever done.
He has a certain angle, a certain angle on things, and a sci-fi, let's say, direction, but with a little more, absurdity into it. I would say it's hard to describe, but I found that in Arrival, the movie Arrival that Denis did, a magnificent movie. I was recognized in that film, his first, the origin of his first films, in Arrival. So in 32 Août sur Terre, there was this, this proposal of something very, very singular, very, very poetic, and it was very different from what was, let's say, more in the mainstream at the time. It has a very aesthetic aspect to it. That was
it's really stylish.
Very stylish. and very different from the, let's say, caméra vérité or documentary film like that they were more, popular at the time. So there's, many different, we never exactly know where we're heading when we accept to play in a film. It's like going on a trip with people that you don't really know. And it's a big journey. Sometimes most of the time it's quite amazing. Sometimes sometimes you wonder why you are there, but it's always an act of faith.
Well, I've always found you to be very adventurous. This is after I met you and got to know you a little bit. I noticed that you, in your accessibility, you were very adventurous. You'd be saying yes very quickly, kind of like embracing your destiny, embracing what was coming your way, much the same way that you are now with doing these virtual plays, and it's like you're always still, I don't want to say searching, that's not the way it comes across to me, but tripping, that's what it comes across as to me, like you're in, for the adventure. And I guess it's part of what really makes you quite special.
This is why I do it, really. I wouldn't like to abort my, let's say, my career. Even career is such a big term to express that occupation.
That you have
occupation. I don't have a plan.
Right.
I don't absolutely don't have a plan, and I'm always surprised that people come to me with some very interesting proposal about some very strange or experimental plays or script, and I'm always pleased to feel that people can see me in that. So it's always an honor, let's say.
And honestly, it's you elevate everything you're in, so that probably has something to do with it. There's two questions I want to make sure I fit in before our time is up in less than 10 minutes at 12:45. I guess the first one is a bit of a bizarre question. I've been thinking about how to ask it. Because in talking to the class about searching for my own culture through film, because of the intense influence that film and cinema as a whole has had on me, when I wanted to ask you how you experienced that with the screen, because let's see if I manage to ask this question properly. It's a bit of a complex one. Hopefully you'll have a more simple answer than my question. So when I look at the screen, when I saw you on the screen in Eldorado or in 32 sur Terre, and I'm there going, man, these people are so cool. This is what I want to be like, When you're young, especially, it's true, when you're young, you look up to people like that. You see people on screen and you go, wow, this is either me or this is who I want to be, And
it's come in a direction, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. It's about identity. We identify with these characters on screen. They're not real people. They're stories. So you, having been in films starting at such a young age, and being the object of that influence, being the influencer, to use a very modern term. No, that's not what I'm saying. How do you experience that in a similar way? Do you experience cinema or media in general in a similar way? Or do you have more perspective on it?
I think, as actors, we are only channels. We are only channels in between the audience and the spirit of the time. of what's going on in the bigger picture, and we are just embodying, literally channeling these different issues, ideas, conceptions, wars, and ideologies, and we are just concentrating that energy into a specific object, which is a theater play or a film or a speech or spoken word or poetry, or so I think we're just channels. We're like a connection between the bigger picture and the specific one. So there's nothing more conscious of what we're doing than that. I don't have the consciousness of
Right.
what I'm doing while I'm doing it. Then when I watch it, and I can, with the perspective, saying, okay, oh wow, okay, that was at that time, it had a certain specific meaning, and with our today's overlook on that, we can we can analyze that. But
what about other films that you're not in? Do you well, when you were younger, because I don't feel the same way about this than when I was young, but when you were younger, having been in films and having been that channel for the zeitgeist, were you still able to watch movies and fall in that kind of admiration? Or was that perception kind of broken for you?
It was not broken, and it's still not. No, I can, when I feel for a movie, when I'm touched by the intelligence, or the grace, or the the infinite sensibility of something, I just fell for it. Maybe I'm a more difficult public audience somehow on certain things. I can be a little pain to watch a film with, because I'm speaking out loud a lot of commentaries that I should keep for myself sometimes, about the acting, about the directing, about the lighting, about it's a very active let's say listening and watching. But still, when I see a good movie, like let's say Malcolm and Mary, I've watched lately, and I was totally drawn by that. I was like, wow. And it's and the same time when I go see a theater play or a music show, when I am touched, it's like an addition of grace, it's an addition of humanity, somehow, that you're perceiving. And that is I'm not blasé. I'm not blasé. Maybe I'm exigeante. I don't know how to say that. Demanding.
But demanding.
Maybe I'm very demanding, but still, when I'm totally, seduced by something, it's still operates. Totally. Thank God.
Thank God indeed. And myself, I'm I know, like most people know now, how movies are made, but I still get caught up by the magic of it. Like we were watching a few weeks ago, L'homme qui plantait des arbres, the man who planted trees. And I found myself crying, bawling, watching that film that I saw first when I might have been 10 years old or so. I still get taken by the magic realism. That's something that's present in Denis' films, very present in his films, especially in 32 Août sur Terre. That would be a way to describe it.
Makes it really poetic, which makes it really poetic. It has another layer of lecture, of understanding. And, when a piece of art can reach that, those fine, subtle layers, it's really it's rare, it's not that common, but when it happens, it's magic. It's like a celebration of that it has something mystical, it has something mystical, like a great choir of of let's say of a gospel song, it really gets into you, and yeah, it just touches something that is really hard to put words on suddenly.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to ask you, and it's 12:45 now. You mentioned something you mentioned something by text to me when I said that we're talking about the Montreal identity in this class. You said, well, that Montreal has changed a lot since then. And I was and I agree with you, and I have my own views on that, but I'd be curious in closing to hear how you might feel that it has changed in the past, I guess, 20 years or so.
Wow, changed a lot. Well, at that time, I used to be a student in film school at Concordia, and we used to hang out on St. Lawrence Boulevard, which I don't know if you know Montreal, guys, all of you, but it's, Montreal Boulevard is splitting the city into, from east to west. And that strip was, that was the funky street where you meet this, the coolest people, the funkiest people, the musicians, the artists, and you would have a pizza on the sidewalk, and no, you remember that?
In that scene at Pizza Delict.
Yeah, and the bars and the Di Salvio disco bar where we used to hang out every night, and when you're young and free, and this street has changed a lot, like in every big city in the world. It just became, condominiums. It just disappeared. There's some old people, grocery stores
of what used to be.
Yeah, they're still holding on that time. But it really changed a lot, and it became a big North American city. But still very cool, and still very very hard to read. It has this bicultural, many multicultural, but this you have to discover it slowly. It doesn't give itself right away. You really have to take the little roads and bicycle around to get the real feel of it.
How right you are. Pascale, I love you. I'm so happy that you came to meet us. It's a real joy, a real special treat, and I thank you again, and I hope I see you soon.
All right. I hope I didn't talk too much.
And no, we could have taken more time. I wish we had.
Okay. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Bye, Jason.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye.
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 Okay, gang. So if anyone wants to stick around, I'm gonna stay for a few minutes if you need me. But otherwise, that was quite the special class, I should think. I don't imagine you knew of Pascale Bussières before the class, but then in seeing those two films back to back and then meeting the person, I don't know, I have a feeling that you've never really experienced something like that before. I certainly have not. So it was a real treat. Thank you guys for being here again this week. And next week, we're going to meet again another actor called Martin Dubreuil, who's going to show us a film that he made here in the Myland called Félix et Mayra. So very special film about this neighborhood and the Hasidic community that's here. And then we're going to talk to the main actor of the film right after, much like we did today. So thank you for sticking around, and I'll see you next week.